Chapter 11 discusses the processes of metacognition in older adults and the detrimental effects of cognitive functions as people age. In an aging world where estimates indicate that by 2025, more than 25% of the U.S. population will be 85 years or older, understanding and improving cognitive functions and mental health in older adults will help a significant portion of the population live better lives and help them to continue to contribute to society. Throughout this video, I will discuss the role that age plays on memory deficiencies and monitoring judgments of learning, the role that negative age-based stereotypes play on memory and learning, and how aging adults can compensate for age-related impairments of learning. First, let's look at age-related deficiencies in memory and monitoring judgments. There was a study conducted by Dunlosky and Connor in 1997, which had participants make monitoring judgments on what they had learned, and the participants were able to control their study time. This study was conducted using two groups, younger adults and older adults. Both sets of participants were asked to memorize a word pairing like dog and spoon. The participants were allowed as much time as they wished until they had learned the pairing, and then once all word pairings were studied, they were given a clue, like dog, and then had to respond with the correct word pairing. This test was conducted 3 times, and the results were very interesting. The study found that although recall performances improved across the 3 tests, it took the older adults 3 times longer to reach the same performance level as the younger group had on their first try. The study suggests that older adults do not utilize impactful monitoring to allocate study time to the same degree as their younger counterparts. With such dramatic age-related memory impairments being found in the study, 2 major questions rise. They are, why does aging have a negative impact on learning and memory? And how can people compensate for age-related impairments as they get older? Now let's look at some possible answers for the first question. Why does aging have a negative impact on learning and memory? One possible reason for why aging has a negative impact on learning and memory is the role of many negative stereotypes tied around aging. An important question was raised that if you believe your memory is becoming worse as you get older, is your memory actually declining, or are your pessimistic views of your memory clouding your ability to accurately judge your abilities? The stereotypes can be found throughout Western culture, including television shows, books, and even parties where a common theme is the over the hill party. Another study done by Johansson, Allenberg, and Zerat in 1997 tested older adults in their 80s and 90s over a 2-year period, and they found that there was a direct correlation between the person's beliefs that they were suffering from memory decline and actual memory decline, although both the magnitude and relationship was fairly small. This means that people's perceptions do in fact help shape the ability of their memory. Now, I thought this was an interesting topic, so I decided to do a little bit more research on the difference between Western cultures and the Confucius cultures of China. In the Chinese culture, it is normally reflected in Confucian principles which dictate behavior that involves self-sacrifice, commitment to family obligations, and honoring, obeying, and supporting older people. Even in modern times, young adults in Eastern Asian cultures are often expected to place adults in more esteemed roles. Because of this esteemed role, elderly members of these cultures do not face the same stereotypes as their Western counterparts. A study conducted in the Genealogical Society of America by Xianguang Tan and Sarah Barber moved to test the Confucius principles of China and if these principles would protect older Chinese adults from the detrimental effects of negative stereotypes. The study tested older Chinese adults living in the United States. It used 114 participants from the ages of 55 to 84, with a fairly even split of men and women. All participants had to be from Chinese-speaking regions and actively involved in Chinese social networks and activities. The studies conducted 2 rounds. The first was to test the susceptibility of age-based stereotypes on memory decline, And the second was to test if being reminded of their esteemed role in the family hierarchy had any effect on their memory. The results of these studies were that they found that the Chinese participants were indeed susceptible to the stereotype threats, and that the cultural intervention was effective in eliminating the risk. Based on these and other similar studies, it's clear that negative age based stereotypes do, in fact, play a role in declining mental capacity of elderly adults. Finally, let's look at some of the ways that people can compensate for age related impairments as they get older. Throughout this chapter, there were many studies pointing to the fact that older adults have difficulties learning new information because they're not capable of ultimately controlling their study. One method had aging adults may become better at controlling their study is the use of effective learning strategies. Younger adults are capable of deploying a multitude of learning strategies to attempt to learn new information. If we remember back to the first study using word pairings, a young adult may attempt to learn the word pairings by utilizing imagery or sentence generation, whereas an older adult may only attempt repetition. One study was conducted where learners were broken into three groups. One group where the learners were given no strategies and asked to learn the pairs. The second group where the participants were asked to link words using sentences. And a third group that uses sentences both during studying and testing. The results of these studies show that older adults had difficulties producing new associations, and that the deficiencies were greatest for the learners who were not given any strategies, and almost non existent when it came to the groups that utilized sentences. Given that older adults show some strategic deficiencies, it may make sense that they may benefit from training specifically designed to apply strategies effectively during their learning. And these benefits have been shown when older adults utilize mnemonic strategies as well. In conclusion, Chapter 11 spoke about age-related deficiencies in memory and monitoring judgments. We discussed how older adults do not utilize impactful monitoring to allocate study time, the negative impacts of stereotypes on aging adult learners, how different cultural beliefs may help or hinder older adult learners, and methods that aging adults can utilize to compensate for age-related impairments as they get older. The following are citations I used during this presentation.